Now more than ever, innovative technologies are fueling change and sparking new ways of thinking. Collaboration between corporations and startups is key to staying at the forefront of these trends. However, finding the right startups can be expensive, time-consuming, and ineffective. But Plug and Play is here to help. As a corporate partner, you will gain access to a whole ecosystem of innovation. Discover startups that meet your tech interests. Stay updated on the latest trends and network with industry peers. We will help you during every stage of your innovation journey, no matter where you are and where you want to go. Get in touch today.
Hey everyone, welcome to Appealing to Gen Z. My name is Sean Volk, and I will be your moderator and host to you, coming to you from San Francisco, California. Today we have an hour-long agenda. First 5 minutes here will be opening remarks, and then we'll jump straight into a panel discussion with some of our startups, as well as one of our corporate partners to give some insights around what they're seeing in the Gen Z space. And then we'll jump into the startup presentations, and those will be people from the panel there. And then we'll just do closing remarks. All right, so at this time, I will invite our panel to unmute and turn their cameras on. Hey, Jay. Barbara.
Hey, Sean.
Hey, Larry.
Hey there.
Kick it off. Maybe we just do some quick introductions, your name, a little bit about yourself and your company. And Jay, let's start with you.
Sure. Jay Grayson, CEO and co-founder of Surround Insurance, 15 years in the insurance industry. Surround is building insurance for Gen Z and millennial consumers.
Amazing. And Barbara?
Hi, I'm Barbara. I work at Zurich Insurance. I'm a business development director. Zurich Insurance is a global 150-year-old insurance company, but we're also very keen to speak to millennials and Gen Z. And I'm joining today from Zurich, Switzerland.
Amazing. Thank you, Barbara. And Sam.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Rowan, co-founder of Onomy. Onomy is a startup. We are an education technology company that seeks to empower a generation of young adults, primarily in the Gen Z demographic, with the knowledge needed to navigate adulthood. And so we leverage content experiences to teach really essential life skills and financial literacy skills, very much including topics of insurance that are top of mind for a lot of young adults these days: renter's insurance, car insurance, health insurance, and so on.
All right. Thank you, Sam. And last but not least, Larry.
Hey guys, Larry Hitchcock, co-founder and CEO of socialeads. We are a social media analytics company that finds people who are talking about the very life events that people in the insurance and financial services business have amazing products and services for.
Thank you, Larry. All right, well, let's just jump into these questions here. And Jay, I'd like to start with you. I think as we both know, Gen Zers, the first of which were born just after 1996, and now beginning to graduate high school, college, and enter the workforce, start to build assets. And of those who have moved away from home, a not insignificant portion have had their first interaction with insurance through Lemonade or Hippo, mostly renter's insurance there. They've also experienced seamless digital interactions their entire life as they are digitally native. And so I guess the question to you, Jay, is given these factors, do you think that there is pressure for insurance companies to provide a similarly seamless experience for digitally native Gen Z?
Absolutely. I mean, the short answer is yes. There's always going to be pressure to provide increasingly seamless experiences. And that's going to only increase with each emerging generation. But in the same vein, I also think it's pretty nuanced for Gen Z. And for me, I kind of have to remember that Gen Z is really the product of Gen X, which is my generation. So, when you think about Gen X, we're kind of known to be independent, resilient, maybe a little bit cynical, and we're imprinting these values on Gen Z. So I think this is, first off, a pretty important point. I have a Gen Z kid. He is digitally native, but he's not necessarily digitally literate. I can tell that He doesn't get into all the toggles and switches and settings on his devices like I do. He just expects everything to work. So, you know, when I think about his social life, it really revolves around his phone and pretty much gaming, which is dominated by texting and Discord. So, you know, generally his experience is he gets this free core product, and when he wants something, his purchase experience is an add-on or an upgrade, and that's what he expects. So yes, he definitely expects seamless, but he also expects contextual. You know, we call it point of sale in insurance, but you know, it's generally he's going to expect insurance to be practically transparent, which is when technology is really at its best. You get a great experience is when you can't separate the technology from the experience itself. So you know, I really do think that the insurance industry does need to be much more seamless to be able to access and sell to Gen Z.
Yeah, absolutely. And funny that you mentioned Discord. I think those micro communities are a great channel of distribution. It'll be an interesting one to see if people can tap that. And we'll have some questions about that later as well. So thank you. Sam, curious if you could talk a bit about how education and trust have been components to becoming a successful kind of distribution pathway and channel.
Yeah, I think education and trust are truly essential when it comes to this, to reaching younger Gen Z audiences, especially those who are making some of their first big financial purchase decisions of their lives, whether it's in college or post-college, when they're achieving independence. And one of the biggest struggles that we're having, I think, societally now, and one I'm sure that we'll dive into more over the course of this panel, is some of the issues around financial literacy when it comes to topics like insurance and people just understanding the fundamentals of some of these different options that are put in front of them and choices that they really need to make as they're making the transition to adulthood and having to make all these decisions for the first time. And we talk to our users every day at Onomy just about how much they're struggling with some of the core foundational concepts here, and trying to find avenues through which education can be presented to them in a way that's more well suited to their learning needs and styles, right? Because so much of the information that's out there is kind of just put out into this white space where a lot of people are left to their own devices to try and find answers, whether it's through Googling or YouTube searching. And so you can understand how a lot of the vacuum related to the lack of knowledge here really has manifested in a growth in social media content around these different topics, right? TikTok is exploding with personal finance content, including a lot that exists in the insurance space, as is YouTube, obviously, and that's been around for quite some time. But young adults are broadly looking to short form educational video in a lot of ways to try and navigate some of these big purchase decisions. And it represents a really significant opportunity for companies operating in this space to actually create compelling educational content that meets the learning needs and styles of this demographic. There's obviously so many benefits from the company side of doing so. One, you're building trust and loyalty with this demographic from an early age by presenting education to them in a really creative and engaging way. But you're also tapping into audiences that are more traditionally underserved from lack of education because they've been kind of excluded from the conversation, and traditional advertising that hasn't worked as well to bring them into the conversation because there's just that, this basic lack of understanding that can connect people to the services that they really need.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish there was a service like that when I was first caught that. Barbara, would love to get your thoughts on this, but then open it up to everyone after. What pressure is there to achieve a successful direct-to-consumer relationship at this time? I know it's a discussion throughout the industry, but would love to hear how you're thinking about that, and then open it up to everyone.
Yeah, sure. So I can only build on what Jay was saying and how customer needs, customer expectations are changing. So the pressure is huge. I think, I can speak for Zurich, but I guess I can speak for the whole industry when I say there's a huge pressure to make direct to consumer relationships work. In fact, at Zurich, we just launched a whole new business unit that is looking at how can we digitally serve newer customers, existing and new customer groups. Actually, also quite interestingly, initially we were very much focused on millennials and Gen Z when we started out this work. Then I think it was a bit accelerated during COVID, but we realized that a digital offering is no longer something that only applies to millennials and Gen Z, right? This is, everybody has moved in that direction. So in that sense, it's becoming even more important and even more powerful. I think from a from an incumbent insurance perspective, it's very difficult to get the direct-to-consumer business model right. And I think there's a clear customer need, and I also see the clear advantage for insurtechs and an angle to jump in and really use data insights to develop much more personalized offerings. We are also doing that, right? And I think we sit on a lot of experience, we sit on a lot of data. Where we are struggling a lot is on the distribution channel. So typically, it's very, very expensive to get direct-to-consumer business models off the ground. It's initially very difficult to build customer loyalty, and I know, some of the big famous insurtech companies out there have just poured millions of marketing dollars into building a B2C model. So that's usually what's being the big challenge here for us. But it's also an opportunity because we see a lot of partnership plays. We see ecosystems becoming stronger and stronger in the insurance space. So I think a lot of the bets are also going to be on those types of partnerships.
Thanks, Barbara. Anyone have any other thoughts here on direct to consumer?
I think with respect to Gen Z.
Go ahead, Sam.
I'll be brief. I think with respect to Gen Z, there's such an outsized importance on getting the direct to consumer relationship right, because this is a demographic that's really consistently evaluating how much the brands resonate with them, how seamless the experience, to speak to a topic we were kind of covering earlier, how seamless of an experience brands are providing their users on a consistent basis. And that's loyalty that not just needs to be won, but needs to be continually won. And I think establishing that relationship, especially with Gen Z consumers from a really young age, is important. And that's one of the things that we're really focused on at Onomy, is providing education in that context, because it's a really good way of connecting with younger users at a time when they're not necessarily low in the funnel and ready to make purchase decisions, but at a time when they really need to find resources that can guide them towards some of the longer term decisions that they need to make. It's important to establish that relationship early and really nurture it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I would add in here that there's a sort of a time cycle to all this too. So, if you're 25 or 23 and you're looking for car insurance or renter's insurance, the practicality of a direct consumer platform really feeds into that. By the time you're married, mortgage, couple of kids, and going to soccer and all that kind of stuff, the amount of time it takes to be effective in making important financial decisions starts to be consumed by regular life. And in our world, not just the consumer side of it, sort of the users and buyers of everything from property and casualty insurance through life and financial services on the buyer side, but also on the enterprise side, is struggling with how to meet in the middle of all of that, and how to take things that are inherently complex, that are difficult to sell, difficult to understand as a buyer, difficult to evaluate as a buyer, and meet the people in the right space, whether it's Gen Z or millennial. COVID has changed in our world, our customer base, COVID has changed it completely from in-person meetings to digital lead generation or signal detection. But it's really, we find that the challenge is really on both sides. It's internal in these incumbent big enterprises who are trying to figure out, how do we hire Gen Z people? How do we fit them into our world? How does a digital native adapt in a sales environment to making 40 or 50 telephone calls a day when they're text first, they're not phone first? And that trickles over into the consumer side of the world as well, where people don't want to hear somebody on the telephone calling them, but then how do we convey the sort of complexities and the nuances of the product offerings and the service offerings in a purely text or digital or sort of micro-channel environment?
On Larry's point, one of many points around life event moments, how that's changed for the consumer, and then how that's impacting insurance and how insurance sort of markets to those life event moments. We find with our earliest customers that we're introduced to our Gen Z customers through their parents. So I'm going to try to coin something. It's actually what's happening is it's B to C to C, which I don't think I've heard or read that anywhere, but we're seeing the parent plays a very important role in advising their child as they're beginning to go off in the world and make very important, financial decisions that will impact them. So parents, we believe, have a very important role to play in that early advice to Gen Z as well.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. And Larry, maybe back to you. I was curious if you had any insight onto what basis you think Gen Z will differentiate the many providers and how they will ultimately end up selecting their insurance provider.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it's really going to be about synchronicity. So it's kind of what Jay is saying. You know, we work with big sales organizations across giant enterprises who are just used to pounding telephones, making cold calls, doing outreach at a point when for a Gen Z or digital native, there's no relevance to that. So, you know, if you're not just married or not just had your first baby and somebody calls you up and says you need disability insurance, you need term life insurance, you need whole life insurance, how do we explain that to somebody? If it's not relevant to their life at that moment in time, which is part of the digital native behavior, which is things are available to me right at this moment in time when I'm either interested in it, curious about it, or have a need for it, that miss is going to be probably the biggest challenge. So in our world, we use a big AI platform to find people who are at those moments in their lives that are the important life events that matter in their financial wellness and all that kind of stuff. And it's at those moments in time where a big enterprise or a small enterprise or even a direct consumer platform can come in and say, we're relevant to you right now. So the relevancy, the authenticity that digital natives demand from their brands and their products, whether it's tennis shoes or television shows or insurance and financial services, those are all things that the sort of synchronicity in it's happening to me now, so I need to know something about it is, I think, a critical component. And it's extremely challenging for people, no matter where you sit in the marketing and sales stack, to bring that timing closer to somebody's thinking about something right now, and now we want to talk to them about it, especially as it gets into more complicated things.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And any other trailing thoughts from other folks here before we move on to the next question?
Maybe just to add to this, what we're also looking into a lot is what drives these people, right? What drives younger generations? What do they stand for? What do they care about? And how does that match with the purpose of our organization? So what do we stand for? And then we're also really trying to convey that through our brand and through we did a complete brand relaunch just at the end of last year to come across as much more positive, much more focused on sustainability, like much more really speaking to younger people, but in a way that feels authentic.
That authenticity, hard to communicate, but definitely important. Jay, question for you. Curious how you are thinking of new value that's being brought into the insurance industry and how to depart from those older legacy propositions that younger generations feel is boring and stale.
Sure, yeah. First off, it's around, we try not to limit ourselves to insurance products only. We know that insurance is a low engagement product. I mean, in the end, it's a promise, right? And most consumers buy insurance sort of hoping that they'll never have to test that promise. So, we think of new value and services being delivered in a lot of ways around an insurance offering. One example is around mobility. So we know that there's a biking revolution happening in cities, which started last year for good reason. Knowing this, we're testing a starter pack of some lightweight insurance products that cover you for driving, biking, and walking. And we bundled that with a bike share membership, so you can get some immediate value from your subscription. And then that protection that we offer is something that happens to come along with it if you get into an accident, which is not covered by the bike sharing network provider. And we know that because we've read through all the terms and conditions of many of these sharing economy services. So insurance is a very important role to play, but we could lead with non-insurance services. We just absolutely know from our experience that the value in the services that insurance is providing, it has to align with the product that they're considering, or the consumer is just not likely to engage.
Okay, and I might ask Barbara a similar question. I know that you guys have done research for a number of years on how to approach this Gen Z question, and have some initial kind of projects based on that. Anything interesting going on with you guys in terms of new value, new services to depart from that legacy proposition?
So actually, I was just making a note. I really need to talk to you, Jay, because we're working on some very similar topics. So our research actually came up with something very, very similar. So, insurance is one thing, but insurance is probably not the hook through which to engage customers. There are services that can show, because like Jay was saying, the problem with insurance is people pay and then they feel they never get anything out of it unless there is a claim. if you provide services, people feel like they get something for either for free or for the money they put into it. So in that sense, what we are experimenting is very similar to what Jay was saying. We also found a couple of, we call them territories, but really themes that speak to younger generations. So we're trying to create the service offering that speaks to those themes, like one of them, for example, being micro communities. Another one being a need for guidance. So there were certain territories that came out. And again, to Jay's point, what we also found is even if you don't go straight in with insurance, you have to keep your offering adjacent to insurance. So it doesn't really help to come in and say, I'm now, I don't know, playing soccer on TikTok. That's not gonna get customers excited because they see absolutely no link to financial services. So Jay would be very, very eager to.
Of course, Barbara. Yeah.
One thing that I would like to add is just the concept of, we spoke earlier about distribution channels, especially a lot of the ones that Gen Z is really flocking to. You think of YouTube and TikTok and Instagram, right? But I think there's an opportunity for companies not to just think of those as distribution channels, but think of them as ways to actually deliver value, right? And educational content is one way in which companies can be really proactive about delivering value to users long before they actually have to make a purchase decision, but to plant the seeds in the mind of younger users that these services are essential and can really deliver value to them. And I think when you start to think about content in that style of being less just an opportunity to win eyeballs and more of an opportunity to deliver value to potential future users, it kind of changes the way in which you think about kind of growing your business and appealing to Gen Z in a different way. And that's kind of one thing that we're really focused on at Onomy, is trying to help companies leverage education as a means of reaching younger users where they're at, even if that's not necessarily going to result in necessarily more sales immediately. But at the top of the funnel, it's really important, and it does show a lot of goodwill towards these younger users who might be struggling to even understand the how and the why of all these different insurance options that are being put in front of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Wanted to bring it back to micro communities, and interested to hear what Jay and Barbara have to say on this, but also everyone, just starting with you guys. I know you mentioned this before. Seems to me and others in the industry that Gen Z has shown a real affinity for these micro communities and generally the more specific digital experiences that they find online. Have you spent any time thinking about how to leverage these micro communities? I know it's been a problem at scale, but yeah, maybe we start with Jay. Have you?
Sure. We haven't done a lot of thinking about digital micro communities. Instead, we actually think about the physical world and the micro communities that exist. I mean, made possible through digital, right? These communities wouldn't find each other without digital. But when we think about our strategy, our target consumer is living in the city, in the urban core. And so we have an opportunity to speak to them as individuals or as micro communities, such as biking networks, as an example, or featuring local businesses, diverse communities that we can actually say, look, we're a part of the Cambridge, Boston area too. And we think about your lifestyle in the city and the kinds of risks that you're taking, and we're trying to speak to you on your terms. We've designed insurance around what you're already doing. So, we haven't specifically gone into, digital only micro communities, but we do think about trying to, target and stay very hyper focused on the kinds of consumers that we think are really underserved by traditional insurance, and not to speak to them just on insurance terms. That's really our sort of early thinking in the area of micro communities.
Okay, and Barbara?
Yeah, on our end, we found that micro communities matter a lot to younger generations because they want to feel connected. They want to be able to get in touch with people that have interests. And we found that brands can be connectors. So we're building actually some small ventures within Zurich, and we've launched actually one brand, which is really all about connecting communities. And we have actually the leaders of that venture built some very successful, or actually one or two very successful businesses in that space before, and their strategies and their strategy and narrative is really all about going away from the broad, standardized, like offering which speaks to everybody but no one, to really targeting communities. And also there you can see they're shifting their strategy, their distribution channels, their marketing into communities, and also into building content, like, which I think for us is a bit, when you speak about education, Sam, for us content building is content has to do a lot of with education. So it's not an instant business model that you can monetize, but it's a longer term bet, I would say.
Okay, and Larry, just wanted to pass this by you before moving on. I know that you guys do a lot, of course, around social environments. So,
we in our world, we find that at least our tool set really enables everybody down to an individual agent or producer to tap into, especially if they're my age, what are the invisible micro communities that exist in the social fabric. And so when you think about, in your case, Jay, bicyclists in Cambridge, or, people in that environment, there are digital places that those people intersect. And in our world, we have the ability to go find those intersection points and fan out from one person into the second degree network to really think about how does a seller, either educationally or from a sales point of view, how do they reach into that community, not just one-to-one? Because the biggest challenge is, as the communities get smaller and smaller, the scaling issue for any producers or agent, field sales force starts to come into play, absent a very, big net in a directed consumer platform that's, all digital. Even in that point, how do you tap into the people who are mattering the most in those micro communities? Our tool set, because we consume both first and second degree network connections, we map all that stuff out. And our AI platform looks into the sort of conversational flow to find the very life event conversations. It's really signal detection. It's not really, life events, but in that environment, we enable our customers to understand those micro communities at a contact point where they can intersect with them in the right moments. And I think that's critical, because as those communities collapse in size, they are much more tightly bound to each other in a digital fashion or on the social fabric. And how do you find them? How do you identify them? How do you educate them? How do you sell to them in those moments that the products and services matter to them at that moment in time?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we have a question actually from the audience here, from Andrew Fairclough, who's hoping to get everyone's perspective on this. Question is, in terms of delivering that insurance promise, event of a claim, I would be interested in hearing the panel's view on how Gen Z sees this process. Would it be foolhardy to stereotype that this has to be totally digital, self-serve experience, or do the Gen Z community want a hands-on or human support experience?
I'll go first. We do have products that are sold, as I mentioned, into Gen Z. So the thing that I've been most surprised with is the level of service that Gen Z would like to have, and it's not just digital. So, buying insurance is an important financial decision, like any. And we do see engagement on the phone, of all things. To just ask a few questions, or still we see email come through to ask a few questions. It's not all just two-way text, that's how they want to engage initially, but they'll switch channels, at least from what we've seen from prospects to surround. So when it comes to the claims experience, and we haven't had claims yet, but we will, as a startup, we haven't experienced the claim yet, but we will. My assumption is that everything will actually start offline or on the phone with a claim. You find that, that's actually sort of across generations. You see people really want to talk to someone. Now, that's not to say that some probability of people wanted to have a digital transaction. We know that digital claims have gone from 0% to probably 35% for that first notice of loss. So they are going to engage digitally. They prefer to engage digitally. But I wouldn't make an assumption in the question. I wouldn't make an assumption that it has to be a fully digital experience, and that is the way they're going to want to lock in. I think you have to make an assumption as a designer, as an interaction designer, as a user experience designer, that people are going to want to pull the lever to talk to somebody in moments that matter. I would even go so far as some people might even want a video chat to have that sort of level of interaction, to know that things are going to be okay, which is where, again, technology can be at its best in these moments now. We can deliver a much more personalized experience and a much more connected experience to say it's going to be okay. Are you okay? Rather than being over the phone through video and through other contextual experiences that they want, and let them drive that experience. If they want to go through a fully digital experience, great. But if they need the human interaction, that's where our industry and in those claims moments is a demonstration of the promise. So you have to humanize it as well, and that can be done through video and other means.
Thanks, Jay. Any other thoughts here? Okay, and just one last question before we wrap up the panel here. I'm going to open this up to everyone. This has to do with the demographic of the insurance industry overall. Historically, the industry has been severely lacking in diversity, right? With the demographic being made up predominantly of white males in their 30s to 50s. And Gen Z is on track to be the most diverse generation yet. And I'm just curious if you guys have any thoughts around how to start attracting that more diverse talent pool to the insurance industry.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll take it from the point of view of sort of how we view our customers and what we start to experience. It's also not just the diversity part of it that's important to our enterprise customers. It's the fact that their entire field sales force are aging out. If you've been selling financial services for 25 or 30 years, you're now in the average age of a successful person in everything from life to financial services. And you've made a great career for yourself. You've made a lot of money. Chances are you're a white man. Chances are you're Gen Z or digital natives father's advisor, and you're on the edge of retirement. This is happening at the very moment in time that the baby boomers are sitting on, by some estimates, between 30 and $50 trillion of money that is going to be inherited down into the Gen Z, digital native millennial communities. And those people are not entering the workforce in insurance and financial services the way that their parents' generation did. So there's an enormous gap coming. The current industry is understaffed already by 20-some% or 25% in financial advising and life insurance sales. It's only getting worse because the road to come in is to be hired and have somebody tell you, you have to make 40 telephone calls a day. You have to sell to your aunts and uncles. And then when you're done with that, you have to go find people that you don't know and talk to them, like really talk to them. And that process gap is enormous. So the top of funnel activity across these bigger enterprises is very treacherous right now at the very moment that there's going to be wholesale combat between these giant legacy enterprises for their share of that inheritance and that money, that wealth, and that generational wealth that's being passed down. So for those digital natives in the audience who are thinking this is a great way for me to go into, or a great career for me to go into, every one of these companies is adapting how they do business, not just on the product and services side, but on the operating side and on the sales side and the marketing side, to a generation that doesn't pick up a telephone and speak to each other as their first thought process when they want to reach out to their friends and family. That's a big deal for people to come into the industry and continue to help that evolution occur. Every one of our big customers is very interested and very focused on underserved communities. All the people who are not, in their sales environment or don't look like their field sales force, how do they adapt that? So I like the idea that there's this enormous opportunity for the next generation to come in and really spread their wings and spread the lens of things, both on a product and services side, but also on a sales and operating side. There's not one enterprise that we do business with that is not top of mind in all of this environment because of the demographic shift and big hole that's coming in every aspect of their enterprise, workforces.
Thank you. And so, sorry, Sam.
I was just going to say, so I can't speak to the insurance industry per se, as well as some of the others on this panel, but as at Onomy, we are a content company for Gen Z. And so I can speak broadly to how Gen Z is viewing kind of their relationship with brands and how that impacts a lot of their career choices. And one thing that's really, I think, come through as we've been trying to build a brand for Gen Z is just how important it is to showcase your values on your sleeve a little bit when it comes to how you kind of broadcast your goals and your mission as a business. And that really does manifest itself in terms of how candidates view how your company is really going to grow and develop and actually adhere, walk the walk, for lack of a better term, of all the diversity initiatives that a lot of companies kind of pay lip service to, but don't necessarily follow through on. And so I think being intentional about building that plan to really walk the walk when it comes to diversity initiatives and then showcase externally that this is something that you actually followed through on is a really important signal to younger candidates who might be considering careers in the industry. The second thing I'll say, which actually has been something that has been a bit of a recent discovery for us, we recently released actually a job hunting course on Onomy, all short form video designed to teach people how to find work and how to leverage tools like LinkedIn and how to build their resumes properly and so on and so forth. And one of the lessons that we've come out with is actually around like how to maximize your impact on LinkedIn, how to use LinkedIn to your advantage. And it was actually very surprising as we've gone to some of our partners at community colleges that we're partnering up with across California and across the country. It's been amazing how many people we've talked to who don't use LinkedIn amongst this younger generation. And it's often because they haven't been exposed to like the benefits that a service like LinkedIn can provide in terms of allowing them to network with peers and classmates and so on and so forth. But you can imagine like the slice of the candidate pool that might be kind of like trying to think of the right word, maybe disenfranchised a little bit by companies that are focusing on LinkedIn to try and hire candidates. And so being creative about thinking like, how can I actually go to more diverse audiences with these job postings, whether it's going to schools directly, whether it's using platforms like Indeed or other ones that maybe have more reach. Those are all valuable ways of really like, trying to find more diverse candidates to grow the pool.
That's a great initiative. And I think this is about time. But everyone, I mean, genuinely really want to say thank you. Some great insights there. And we are not quite done with all of you here as we will start to move into the starter presentations. But thank you again. Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
All right, some webinar housekeeping. If you have any questions about any of the startup pitches coming up, please just use the Q&A button at the bottom of your window and use the chat feature for general questions or comments as well. And then please just remain muted unless you are presenting yourself. All right, and we will have Surround, Onomy, and socialeads. So it will be 5 minutes to pitch, followed by a 2-minute Q&A. And then again, these are the same startups that were on the panel here. So to kick it off, we will have Surround.
Great, thanks, Sean. Are you able to see the pre's?
Yeah, that looks good to me.
Great, thanks. Hi, everyone. As mentioned at the start, I'm Jay, CEO and co-founder at Surround Insurance, where our insurance is built around you. Sorry, I'm having a. You see just the PowerPoint, right, Sean?
Yeah, I can see just the PowerPoint right now.
Oh, great. Okay, because the PowerPoint window also popped up. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
So most insurance is built around something: a car, a home, a family, and a job. But the game of life has changed. Consumers in their 20s and 30s no longer dream of a traditional life. Instead, their lives are defined by transformations in mobility, shelter, and work. People who rent, share, and freelance deserve protection too, but the problem is insurance is too confusing to set up when they need it and too expensive even when they figured it out. At Surround Insurance, what we protect is you. Renting or borrowing a car, no problem. Renting an apartment, we've got you covered. Even freelancing work has risks, and we help make that worry go away. Surround makes it easy to live your life with confidence because our insurance is built around you. Meeting the needs of these emerging consumers requires an entirely new and a new way of thinking. And as we talked about on the panel, they demand personalization, ease, and simplicity found in other industries, and they're willing to pay for the peace of mind that comes with well-designed insurance. This market is a $10 billion opportunity, and each year 4 million consumers graduate into what we call the access economy. At Surround, we combine the power of a platform with our proprietary products to deliver a new kind of insurance experience. Our products are vastly simplified and they make the process easy. And they're also designed to work together. They're flat priced, pre-configured, and require a minimum set of questions to create a subscription-like feel. We leverage our platform to deliver simple but powerful bundles of insurance matched to the modern lifestyles of younger consumers. It's an API-first microservices platform that allows for the sale of our own products or integrating with other companies' products such as life, accident, or health. And it's built to scale. We're building the platform to intelligently adjust coverage as your life changes. So we're now live in our home state of Massachusetts, and we're open to exploring new opportunities with carriers and distribution partners. If you're a carrier on the line, we can incorporate your products into our platform experience. We're also open to pilots to license the Surround platform as well. If you're a startup, agent, or broker, please reach out to learn more about revenue generating opportunities or commissions as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jay. I have a couple questions here.
Sure.
I was curious what products you have today, but then really what's on the roadmap moving forward.
Yeah, we have 3 products. They're all of our own creation. So we decide what questions to ask, the rating algorithms, the underwriting, and the coverages. So they're surround products that we distribute. So the first product is a driving product. It actually follows you as a driver in any rented or borrowed car. The second product is a simplified renter's insurance product. And the third is a lightweight freelancing professional liability product. They're all very accessible, flat priced, and can be configured in any one of 7 different combinations. We've got 2 new products that are coming on the horizon. We've signed agreements with insurance carriers. That's going to give us about 30 different product combinations that we can offer as subscription bundles. So that's on the horizon. And then we'll continue to add products as well as the customers tell us and show us what other coverages that we don't offer that we need to.
Okay, amazing. And just last question. Just curious what you have learned so far by having your own insurance products.
Yeah, experiment ruthlessly with your value proposition. That's probably been the biggest learning. We originally thought our value proposition was around personalized insurance. We thought that would, resonate a great deal. Instead, what we're finding is the savings that we can offer consumers matters a lot. It's been fascinating for us to see some of the earliest consumer profiles. We've got many of the people that we're expecting that we've talked about on today's panel, Gen Z consumers whose parents paid for our products, consumers in their 20s who are establishing financial independence, but we also are attracting senior citizens that are empty nesters, sort of giving up their assets and moving back to the city. So different messages are resonating for each of those populations. So the biggest thing would be just continue to test in the marketing and branding and the positioning of your products. Even if you don't have a product, you can experiment a great deal. So it's been fun to watch.
Well, thank you, Jay. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks.
Awesome. Really excited to have the opportunity to share with you a little bit about what we're building at Onomy. So Onomy, as I mentioned before, is an online education company. We're seeking to empower a generation of young adults with the knowledge needed to navigate adulthood. All these, young adults in college, recent graduates who are making the first big financial purchase decisions of their lives. We're seeking to leverage content-rich experiences that really meet their learning needs and styles to teach essential life and financial literacy skills, ranging from all different topics and subtopics around insurance to things like investing and credit and job hunting and home buying and so much more. And as we've kind of talked a little bit about over the course of this panel, there's a massive challenge when it comes to working with Gen Z and young adult audiences because of lack of education and exposure around a lot of different topics within personal finance and within insurance more specifically. A couple of stats that always stand out to us here at Onomy are that nearly half of Gen Zers report having a lot of unanswered questions about money, and 76% wished that they had learned a little bit more about personal finance in high school. And when you really take a step back and evaluate that landscape, it's just so clear that there's this gap when it comes to educational resources that could really be leveraged in a positive way to help connect users with companies that are offering financial products and services and insurance products and services that could really benefit them, as well as helping companies actually get in front of this audience. And so, I spoke a little bit during the panel just about some of the sources that Gen Z is really turning to try and fill the gap of lack of education. And what comes up to mind most prominently in the eyes of these users are the social media platforms. You know, TikTok has really blown up as a content consumption medium, especially in the area of personal finance education. You know, there are so many different influencers and creators who have popped up trying to teach about these topics in a relatable way, although the quality is oftentimes not great. There's a lot of misinformation that floats around these platforms, and users are really starting to crave content that not only meets this style, but also is quality information and information that they can trust. And that's really where Onomy comes in. You know, ultimately, you know, this is what we do best. You know, we combine the best parts of the social media experience, you know, highly authentic and engaging content with quality that actually engenders trust. On the product now, we've done courses around health insurance, taxes, investing, budgeting, and a lot more. And there's really a lot more on the way, especially in different areas of insurance, because we get questions so consistently from our users about, oh, I don't understand why I need renter's insurance or what this is for. Health insurance feels so intimidating to a lot of younger users. They're looking for clarity around what those options are. And so we're trying to create a marketplace where all of this content can be stored in a really ready-made, free resource for young adults who are looking for guidance. And more directly from the partner perspective, we're really working with partners that operate in these spaces to curate high quality educational content that can provide enormous value in attracting and engaging Gen Z audiences in a way that traditional advertising just hasn't connected with. So I want to talk through real quick what our value is from a partner perspective in a little bit more in-depth manner. So short form educational content is really effective in attracting Gen Z in a way that traditional advertising is not. And I think it's intuitive as to why, right? You know, if you're trying to sell a complex financial product to a younger user without them really understanding the how and the why of what your product actually is designed to do for them, it's really difficult to make that connection impactful. And so one of the areas in which educational content can really move the needle is by being impactful at the top of the funnel. You know, content that's educational and informative and engaging and funny has a way of really connecting with this audience in a way that's more memorable. And I think furthermore, to the second point, really delivers more value for users when they're at the top of the funnel. And delivering value manifests itself in significantly more brand loyalty, as well as more memorability when it comes to the different types of outreach that can be done on these channels. Lastly, on the underserved market side, this is another really crucial area where educational content can really come into your strategy at the top of the funnel. There's an opportunity to grow the size of the total audience for products and services in insurance and otherwise by speaking in educational terms about a lot of these topics that have too often been gated from communities in which the conversation around these topics at home or at school are not as prevalent. And there's just a significant structural inequality in society around discussion of a lot of these topic areas that can be broken down through quality educational content that meets users where they're at. So we have been live and in market for a little bit over half a year now, and want to speak to just real quick some of the successes that we've had. So we've gotten out a lot of different content, all primarily short form video, educational content that's really humorous and engaging and lighthearted, and just seen a ton of engagement to it. We're consistently scoring really high from an NPS perspective. We are seeing really, significantly strong results on content engagement in terms of like how long people are viewing the content and how they're engaging with the videos themselves. And it's really manifested itself as well in social growth and engagement, where we've been able to grow organically really significantly over the course of the last several months. Lastly, we've gotten really positive student response, and we've been picked up as well by a number of community colleges and universities that see a ton of value in what we're offering and trying to provide this as a benefit to their students. Which has just been further validation that we're really on the right track when it comes to combining education and entertainment in a way that really does move the needle for younger users to get them to a point where they feel comfortable being, consumers of these products and services. So real quick, I'll wrap up. I think I might be up at time. So we're looking to partner with you to empower a generation and engage a new audience. So we can close the practical knowledge gap together and the financial literacy gap together. We can bring more highly engaging educational content experiences to Gen Z together. And we've been starting to bring on partners. We have our first few through the door. So we would really love to have a conversation with you about how we can help and see if we can fit you in. So please get in touch. Check us out at onomy.co and let's chat about how we can partner. I dropped my email in here. I guess maybe my share was taken over, but I will, my email is just sam@onomy.co. So looking forward to connecting with you all.
Thanks, Sam. And if you want to put that into the chat, also welcome to do that. I think we just have time for one question, but did want to get your take on this. And that is, what does it take to form a relationship with Gen Zers, and how are they different from the generations before them?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that's really critical to understand, I think, for companies that are looking to get in front of this audience. And we've spoken to some of these themes already as part of this panel. But this is an audience that lives on these social channels and is really looking for authentic and relatable and engaging content that can really bridge the gap between a lot of these financial products and services and their day-to-day needs. And so when we think about creating our content in a way that's really going to resonate, it's all about trying to match that style that users are really accustomed to on a lot of these social channels. So it's got to be, it's got to be entertainment. You're competing with entertainment experiences that a lot of these younger audiences are engaging with on YouTube and TikTok and elsewhere, and it needs to really drive that kind of emotional response. It's also got to be authentic and relatable in a way that people see themselves in the content that's being created, and they understand how they can connect what they're hearing with the decisions that they need to make in their day-to-day. And I think really leaning into that kind of organic content formula style is just so much more effective than trying to run a battering ram of traditional advertisements into this demographic when they might not really fully understand exactly what the products and services that you're trying to offer really are or how they work.
Right, absolutely. All right, well, Sam, I do appreciate you being here. Thank you for the insights today.
Thank you.
Okay, last but not least, Larry, the social leads. You would take it away.
All righty, let me make sure that you guys can see all of this now.
Looking good.
Everybody can see that. Excellent. Well, I'm Larry. I'm co-founder and CEO of socialeads. Thank you all for sticking with the program all the way to the end here. This is from the Wall Street Journal a couple of months ago. The president of Bank of America's Merrill Lynch company actually published this in the Wall Street Journal, that they are stopping all cold calling for all of their new recruits because it just doesn't work anymore. So the old ways for these big enterprises in the financial service and the life insurance business just plain don't work. They don't work on the sales side and they don't work on the buyer side. He did say, however, that they wanted to start using LinkedIn for that prospecting at the top of the funnel. And sadly, or good for us, most people don't share their personal life events on LinkedIn. And what do I mean by this? So this actually is, it's not, Kara Quinn's not her real name, but this is a story of a financial advisor of one of our clients at Northwestern Mutual, who's in her second year and is desperate to try to find ways to make it to her third year and continue on in the profession. The way that it works normally is they get hired, you call your aunts and uncles and all your friends and neighbors and all the people you went to college with as your warm market. Once you've exhausted that, now you need to know, who do I call next? Digital natives are social media first, they're texting first, they're not phone calling first. And this creates a problem for people like Kara to find out who should I be calling and how can I be of service to them. This is on the other side of it, the buyer side. So these are not really Tom and Tiffany, but this is a real situation. People who just got married, spend their money getting on their honeymoon, they post about it on Twitter. And then they come back and they realize that they have overspent, and how are they going to do that? Or they've moved together into a bigger place that costs more and requires both of their income to pay for. And if anything happens to one or the other of them, how do they continue to do that? All the way through, if they have kids, they buy a house, they buy cars, they do the kinds of things that people do when they build their families. And as we've talked about this before, the digital natives are not the most financially literate of generations, and our findings in the data and our customer side of it are they really don't want to talk to their parents' financial advisor about what they should be doing in their lives. So what did we do? We built an artificial intelligence platform that ingests data from the social fabric, from LinkedIn and Twitter, and also brings in data from Google. You don't see Facebook on here because Facebook is still having its issues and still operating under a federal consent decree, and they don't allow data to come out of their APIs like they used to. And what we look for using our AI engine. This is what the platform does. It's got a natural language processing engine. It's got a personality detection engine, emotionality and sentiment. And then most importantly, we're looking for the very life events that are happening so that our clients, who are the sellers and the sales organizations and the marketing organizations of these financial services firms and insurance firms, can be of service at just the right moment. So these are the 14 life events that we detect now. We're building new life event detectors every day. But you can see that this is the traditional moments, that if you're having one of these moments occur in your world, that you're going to be thinking about your financial wellness or your insurance profile at that moment in time. Platform is done and running. We just released this a couple of weeks ago. We are now delivering top leads on a daily basis to our advisors and our agents' telephones. That enables you to get a top lead list. There's a variety of ways that this comes in. We'll do identity resolution, grab phone numbers, email addresses, et cetera, and give the ability to reach out to that person right then and there. So this is kind of servicing that digital native, digital first seller on that sales side, so they can be of service to the buyers on that side. We do have a full desktop platform already up and running. We've got everything from auto following people on Social Fabric for you. We generate knowledge of who can introduce you, who's in your first degree, who's in your second degree. And as I said, we match email, phone number, and LinkedIn to people who are having the very life events you're looking for. Output, if you're working at a big enterprise or even a small regional office, you're going to want to keep track of all of this. We integrate with Salesforce, HubSpot, and Microsoft Dynamics. We also work with some of our customers to integrate directly to their proprietary in-house products. We have a bunch of clients and customers already. We've got enterprise customers. Northwestern Mutual is our first enterprise customer. Allstate's our second enterprise customer. A variety of others that are working through pilots. We're already selling out into all of these different sales organizations environment. Every day there's a new logo that pops up here. This is a little bit out of date already. Ameriprise, Charles Schwab, all those folks are using the platform as well. Thanks very much, and happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Thank you, Larry. Quite cool piece of technology there. Just one question.
Sure.
I was curious how you are finding big enterprises and their sales forces adapting to Gen Z and the digitally native.
Yeah, great question. It's really about like the whole notion of being a digital native is that you're native to a new way of thinking about things, a new way of engaging with your world, both digitally and virtually, and in the real world itself. And it's how these companies are trying to figure out how to take that behavior and inculcate it in their sales practices. So starting with that Wall Street Journal article is a great example. One of the largest organizations in the world that's out there, got people calling people like me every day, want to be a customer at Bank of America and Merrill Lynch, give me your finances, give me your investments. That just doesn't work anymore. Nobody uses that as a channel to communicate. And digital natives are sort of leading that environment where if that organization doesn't adapt to the kinds of communication channels and the moments in time where that direct connection or that authentic and real connection can be made, they're going to miss out on the entire marketplace. So they're going to miss out on being able to have Gen Z or digital native millennials in their customer base to the degree that they need to. When that thing occurs that I talked about earlier, this passing on of wealth is an enormous amount of money, not just here in the United States, but in all over the world. And if those people are not your customers already, you haven't begun to build that bond of trust and service and being there for them at the important life events. So you're going to miss out, not just in the initial wave of that, but you're going to miss out in a lot of it all long term. So it's a real important thing for these companies to figure out. And we build our tool set acknowledging that 1/3 to 40% of the sales force in every one of these organizations, millions of advisors and agents, are digital natives themselves. So the new wave of employees in these companies are digital native first, they're text-based first, they're not phone call first. And so that part of it is helping the companies to get at least an age-aligned thought process at the customer level as well. So it works on both sides. Digital natives don't want to be called in the middle of, something that isn't relative to them to talk about, upgrading your term life insurance to whole life insurance, if anybody even knows what that is. They want to wait and hear about that at the moment that is relevant, that they are worried about whether or not that product matters to them or not. So timing is really important. But having an adaptation of the whole process around which your products are designed, Your sales force is engaging. All that is happening all over the place right now. We do actually have a bunch of B2B cases in the queue. We have been working in the more broker and sort of business line part of it. We divide the universe of our customers are divided into life and financial services, property and casualty, sort of consumer as an all-state environment. And then the last third is the whole business line world. It's a little bit more niggling to detect the signal from a business or a commercial lines side of it, but we've got about 10 or 11 pilots that we're working and trying to co-develop products with them.
All right, Larry, I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
All right, and if anyone would like to connect afterwards here, feel free to shoot me an email. I'd be glad to make any connections between any of the presenters today and yourself. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a great week. Thanks for coming in.